Good night, everybody. It's actually morning now, Monday, the 28th of August, 2023. Hope everybody's doing okay. I am known as Christ I am Disciple. I'm also known as What You Need. This is my boxing channel, but I'm actually going to have to do a little stream on video. So we're talking basically here about Zack Snyder's team up movies, as the title tells you. So we'll be looking at that. Okay, the stream says that I'm supposed to start streaming right about now. So that's why I'm streaming right now. But suffice it to say, I'm still setting up the links and everything for everybody to be able to see what we're going to talk about. As always, I'm going to give you guys the format because I know it's very late in the night. Start off with scripture. And then we're going to talk about Zack Snyder's movies. Actually, every single movie that Zack Snyder's done has actually been a team-up movie. And he actually said that in an interview where he was talking about for Rebel Moon. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to go through some of the unique things about his team-up movies. And I know it's very late in the night. It's like 1:22 a.m. where I am, Eastern Atlantic Standard Time. But I decided to go through this because I'm not feeling like I can sleep right now. So I said I'll just spend the time up. So basically, Zack Snyder, if you include Rebel Moon, would have done 10 movies and 10 feature films. And, every single one of them was a team up movie. Every single one of them. And I'll show you. And they're all unique. They're all unique in their own different way. He's approached this thing several different ways. So we're actually going to look at that. And I hope you guys enjoy it. So like I said, we start off with scripture, and then I'll go into the team up movies, the 10 of them. All right. By the way, you can donate to this channel. That is my donation link there for PayPal. And you can find it in the chat section, as well as you may find it in the description as well. If you want to join on here as a guest, if you want to pop on here and chat with me, not just be in the chat section as a chat, but actually as a real person dialoguing with me, we can do that as well. That's the link. It's in the chat section right there. Okay. So now that we got all of that out the way, I'm right now, as I'm talking to you guys, I'm also trying to link up with Twitter and with Facebook so that people will know that the stream is going on as we speak. Now, some of you guys, you know me for talking boxing on this channel, but I actually have another channel. The only reason why I'm using this StreamYard right now to do what I do on the other channel is because I kind of used up all my stream time minutes. So I'll be on here talking about these movies right now and some very interesting things we're going to find out about them, right? So without further ado, let me get into the scripture that we're going to talk about. Yeah. So without further ado, I'm going to go into the scripture. And the scripture has to do with teaming up. So for those of you who know the New Testament, it's going to be coming from a very sleepy, but I just can't sleep. 1 Corinthians chapter 12. And we're looking at verses 12 to verses 13. All right. It goes like this. The human body has many parts, but the many parts make up only one body. So it is with the body of Christ. Some of us are Jews, some of us are Gentiles, some of us are slaves, some of us are free. But we all have been baptized into Christ's body by one Spirit, and we've all received the same Spirit. You know, people come from different walks of life, and not quite sure what's going on right now. I'm seeing. Oh, okay. Yeah, people come from different walks of life. You know, we may come from different backgrounds, different histories. But one thing is certain: people will only walk together with each other if they don't. They will walk together with each other if they agree on some commonality. Something that's in common causes people to walk together, and that's how teams are formed. A common goal. Sometimes it's just common enjoyment of things. You know, so there's always going to be a commonality that brings together people. And that's why people even talk. In the case of the Snyderverse, the commonality may be that we all like Zack Snyder's films, or we may like certain kinds of films, or we may like a particular film that we all share in and we feel passionate about. So that is what brings people together. That's what causes team building. And what's interesting about the team building here is Zack Snyder has team built in every single movie he's done, but he also team built us. He built a team. He built us to actually be a team. So he's built his own team around himself, and he's, you know. So I thought this was very interesting, and it's because we all enjoy the same. We have commonalities in our enjoyment of entertainment when it comes to movies. And so this is just something that I thought was interesting, in that how people just kind of spontaneously came together. And so anyway, what I'm going to talk about, though, is I'm going to discuss some of the filmography of what Zack Snyder does. So we got past scripture. We just covered that. And again, it has to do with the commonality. Well, in terms of Christian circles, it will be commonality of spirit. But similarly, you know, you can have commonality of goal or things you like, etc., that brings people together. So there are 10 films, and if you look at the the picture that I have for this video, for the stream, you will see all 10 of the movies that Zack Snyder actually directed. So you have Dawn of the Dead. You also have 300. Okay. You have the Legend Guardians, the Owls of Gahul. Legend of the Guardians, the Owls of Gahul. You also have Sucker Punch. Okay. All of these movies, they're teams of people or teams of animals, in the case of Owls of Gahul, that come together. Okay. And you have Watchmen. Watchmen's interesting because Watchmen, that movie starts as a decaying team. It's actually a decaying team. It's different. It's more about a demolition. It's all about breaking down the superhero genre and then building it back up. Man of Steel, interestingly enough, is not about one person, even though it does focus on one person. It does bring about, you see team building in this movie. And just think about, you know, the latter end of the movie and what happened. Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice is actually very interesting because it is sort of a clash of ideals that brings about team building in this movie. So that's an interesting thing to look at. Then we have Zack Snyder's Justice League, which, you know, it's about family. And we'll talk about that in some more detail. Army of the Dead is actually interesting in that Army of the Dead, you know, the team building here is for the purpose of a heist. It's really about, it's a heist movie. So this team building is where um, the lead character goes around trying to build a team is very interesting as well. Okay, but the purpose and the goal is the commonality that draws them together is actually a criminal act. And then Rebel Moon, which is the latest of Zack Snyder's team building movie, is going to be very interesting as well. And we're going to find out in time. I don't know really exactly how all these different characters from all these different cultures and different worlds will come together and draw each other together. But we'll still try and speculate, and we'll see. But it's all different. They're all different in how these teams are formed, why they are formed. You know, so that's what I want to talk to you guys about right now. All right, so we'll start off with Dawn of the Dead. Dawn of the Dead, the team came together not by choice, but because of situation. They were forced together into this mall, and these people didn't know each other, and they had to survive. And so, in trying to survive, they started to discover and learn about each other. Some people were assholes, some people weren't, and ultimately, at the end of this movie, this team was destroyed. Actually, it was zero survivors because the last person who was supposed to survive was on the same was on the boat with a zombie. A zombie was on the boat with them, so they also perished. But for survival, people will come together. People who may diametrically not mix with each other ever, they end up coming together. So this is a movie about survival, Dawn of the Dead, and for expediency, these people came together. And of course, they didn't all mesh with each other. There were some assholes in the mix, and they ended up dying off and stuff like that. So, some people couldn't let go. They couldn't let go loss. All kinds of things happened in the movie. There was a sacrifice, people just to let the other people survive. Somebody survive so they could, see what could happen from there. Ultimately, one person escaped the place of the entire team, and that person is still going to die because they're on a boat where zombies are still on the boat. So is what it is. But Dawn of the Dead is interesting in the sense that it is not a nihilistic movie. All right. So don't think that, you're saying it's pointless what happened. Not exactly. The story tells a detail about in very dire times, in times of peril, in times of distress, in times of natural disaster or disaster, people tend to team together. They'll either team together or they'll try and fight it out by themselves. But usually numbers, are convenient for that. So Dawn of the Dead, the team doesn't come together because they want to come together. They didn't choose to come together. This was out of necessity that they found themselves together. And as a result of that, we got this dynamic. We started having this drama and this dynamic amongst the people in this team, So that was Dawn of the Dead. That's how that team was. Now, when you look at 300, 300 is very interesting in that the team that is formed here has been forged over many, many years. These people grew up together. These people fought together. These people, they had a long history together. So this was not one where you were actually building a team. The team was already there. These people were born and bred soldiers, trained, and they showed you the due process, how this all happened and how they were selected, how they were, only the perfect children were allowed to live. The rest would be killed. And, but that wasn't the center of it. The center of it was how forged this team was, how the oneness of this team was, how one in purpose and one in mind they were, and how coordinated they were with each other because they had worked with each other for so long. And though there were insurmountable odds against this team, as in almost all these movies, there are insurmountable odds against the teams. This team was able to, even though they all died, save one, they kind of like Dawn of the Dead, sort of like, even though they all died, they created this great mythos that allowed for Greece to overthrow Persia and have this great revolution. I pretty much shift the center of power, right? And it's a legendary story. It's you know, Frank Miller wrote a comic on it, and this is what the graphic novel, and this is what Zack Snyder actually used. It's a comic book movie to bring to life the mythos of it. So basically, in this case, this team was together already. All right. So we were just learning about how the ritual processes to get on the team, what kind of mindset these people were, how they were warriors through and through. And, you know, they encouraged being warriors and they bred warriors, and their pride was being in warriors and that kind of thing. So whereas with Dawn of the Dead, the coalescence of a team happened because of necessity, and because not because people chose to have those people as members of their team, but that's just how it happened. 300 is about an established team already, and they're just showing you the due process of how this team became what it was, the mindset of the team, the oneness of the team, and that even though they had small numbers, they were indomitable, and they showed us through their works and their acts what kind of team they were. So we actually have a team in 300, whereas with Dawn of the Dead was a kind of formation of a team, which, again, it could have worked or it could not work. This was out of necessity. The people didn't even know each other like that, right? And it wasn't about commonality. It wasn't about a common bond necessarily. It was about necessity, survival. In the Owls of Ga'Hoole, one owl goes on this journey. He's going on this journey, and this journey involves him teaming up with some other owls to face another team of owls, which had been, you know, taking advantage of another colony. And there was a prophecy that associated this owl, who was coming into his hero's journey, you know, it associated him with being the one. So what was interesting about this is this owl had to team up, and there were certain people with him all the way through who helped him to develop in his hero's journey, as well as he had to team up with them to succeed. And so I thought this was great. You know, The Legend of the Guardians, The Owls of Ga'Hoole is a tremendous film. It's a fantastic film. And in this case, it's a hero's journey film. It really is focused, it's somewhat centered around a certain owl, but at the same time, it is a team movie as well. Because the stakes that the owl is in and the new environment that he finds himself in, he now has, you know, he invests himself into it. And because he invests himself into it, he finds himself forming allegiances, and because of that, he forms a team. So once again, team building, but in this case, it's part of a journey of a particular individual. So the Dawn of the Dead wasn't by choice that the team was formed, but by true necessity. The second movie, we already had the team. It was just describing the team and how it worked, and the oneness that they had, and how they were very successful in what they were doing, even within some multiple odds. The third one, Owls of Ga'Hoole, was about a hero's journey in which the hero couples up and teams up with certain people that help him in his journey. And so it's kind of like the individual, and then it becomes the team. And the focus is not necessarily completely on the team, it's more on the individual, but the individual had to grow and develop, and that's because the team allowed him to be so. Now, Sucker Punch is interesting as well. The difference between Owls of Ga'Hoole and the other movies we saw ahead of us was This was the formation of a team by choice, meaning the hero chose to step into the limelight, to step into the light. The hero chose to be with these people. He chose to be with this team, etc. He grew to love these people. He grew to love the journey, the people he was journeying with as well, and he formed part of a team. There was some loss that was involved. That's a whole other story for another day, because he had a mentor and all of that, and he lost the mentor. But the truth is, in this hero journey, he formed a team, and this is the team that actually won. But as you know, he also grew as a hero in that. Now with Sucker Punch is interesting as well. Sucker Punch was about forming a team. It was the elements of the team, the women that ended up in the position that they were in, was not by choice. Again, they shared in the adverse conditions that were there and the exploitation, but they didn't choose to be, unlike Gahu, where he chose to be with these people. They didn't choose to be with those people. They ended up being there, and then they formed a team to fight back. So this was about a team building to fight back, which again, you would say 300 kind of has that too, but and Gahu, but in this case, this was specifically to fight back on exploitation. Whereas 300 was about defending your place, defending your territory. Gahu was about, yes, also confronting a bully. You know, Sucker Punch is not just about confronting a bully, but actually about destroying the system of exploitation. It was a system that was put in place. It wasn't just an individual or individuals or a team of individuals, but it was a system, and they were able to take down that system. And that's what Sucker Punch was about, which is, again, a different kind of formation. That's why I said Zack Snyder keep on doing these unique team movies. Watchmen is very interesting as well. Watchmen is a movie that so the movie begins with a team and shows this team decaying or becoming corruptible. The heroes, the way how heroes are seen, is now becoming corruptible. It's not, the heroes are not the heroes they were before, or they maybe hid these things or whatever. And we come to the second generation heroes, and these second generation heroes are killing one another. There's all kinds of baggage from bad things that the previous heroes did and repercussions. And at the same time, the world is in a certain kind of system. And so Ozymandias is the guy who's been killing people and stuff, trying to set up a particular outcome. Okay. And we get some backstory on Dr. Manhattan and his relationship with, you know, Silk Spectra and so on and so on and so on. But suffice it to say, this movie is not necessarily about team building. It's actually the opposite. It's like a deconstruction of the team and sort of individual people's goals and ideals, or how they've treated other people. The comedian, for example, being seemingly the most notorious of them all, but ultimately in the end, he turned out to be actually the most sincere. Rorschach, and he's trying to just get the straight truth, straight shooter. You know, he was trying to get the straight truth. He didn't like how things were going, and you know, ultimately in the end, it cost him his life. The point I'm making is, Watchmen is a deconstruction of teams and heroes. That's the thing about Watchmen that's very interesting. It's the opposite of what movies have. So generally in a movie, you have a hero on a journey. He lines up with another hero, and they form a team to deal with the big problems ahead. This is the opposite. This one, you have a team. It's deconstructed and broken down. An individual is trying to solve the problem on his own while destroying members of the team to get the outcome to help better the world, which is just the opposite of right, or what you would expect. So that's what Watchmen is about, and it's just a totally different take. It's very unique, and it's a very different road. Then we had Man of Steel. Man of Steel is kind of like Al-Zagahul in that we have this hero's journey, but by the time we get to the end of the movie, this hero must team up. He must win the trust, first of all, of the people he wants to team up with. So the interesting part about Man of Steel that's a little bit different to Al-Zagahul, because Al-Zagahul, there's this mentor, of course, mentoring the young guy. He's learning about it, and he makes mistakes. He's supposed to lead, this team, and he's all about himself at a certain point, and so he gets beaten by the enemy, and then he has to regroup and reassess himself and fit his place in the team to be able to deal with the enemy and be humble and all of these things, and cost the life of his mentor and all that kind of stuff, right? Now, in the case of Man of Steel is more about winning the trust over of human beings. Human beings learning to trust Kal-El. And Kal-El, who is not a human being, he's not really one of us, but he looks like us, but he is totally much different culture. He has different abilities. He has different things that happen to him that are not normal, and he has to go through certain trials and tribulations. So he had difficulty breathing the atmosphere that we lived in. He had difficulty adjusting in his puberty to, increase senses and increase awareness, increase powers and abilities. So there was a lot of things that happened to Kal-El in his life that let him know I'm not like everybody else. And then he gets to find out he was an alien, and he needs to find out his roots and all that kind of stuff. So in his journey anyway, which is the important thing, he learns how to team up with human beings and how to trust human beings. And then now he has to show human beings that he is trustworthy. So you see Kal-El going to the priest, for example, to try and sort out his issues. And you see him trust Lois Lane not to publicize him and put him out there, even though she did initially, and then she just stopped pursuing it. And so he learns to trust human beings. Of course, he trusted his parents, he trusted his father. So, his father told him not to do certain things, and he just didn't do them. So he trusted his father. So he had learned to trust human beings. He knew all human beings, don't always reciprocate that trust or don't always reciprocate that love. And he understood that. What he had to do now was persuade human beings that he was trustworthy. So in the Battle of Smallville, I think that's where he was named as well. Superman. He came to win over Colonel Hardy's trust. He came to earn over the trust of the defense forces there and the military. And then he by the end of the movie, he started to win over the trust of General Swanwick. General Swanwick, while he sort of realized that he could kind of trust Superman, was still not there yet, right? So in the team building, as the priest told Cal, he said it's a leap of faith. The trust part comes later. So that was kind of crazy because Cal at the end of the movie basically says, "I guess I'll have to trust you," right? So in this team building, there's not complete trust. In fact, Cal threw himself into the situation with Smallville, and they were shooting at Cal, and they hit Cal and all kinds of things. And they thought he was just one of them because this is the guy that they gave up to General Zod, of course. Kryptonian, they're all Kryptonians. They'll stay together, right? And it was only when Cal saved when he saved Colonel Hardy's life, that Colonel Hardy realized that Cal was different and he could trust him. Because being a soldier, you trust people with your life, and you just realize his life was, about to end with the Kryptonian, and Cal saved his life. So he knew this man is not our enemy, you know. And then, of course, Cal was the one that started to devise the plan with the military to take down Zod and his forces. So Cal basically won over the trust of, you know, the leadership of the U.S. military and R&D, you know. And then, you know, some of the U.S. military, of course, lost their lives. Colonel Hardy possibly lost his life. If he didn't lose his life, well, he's in the Phantom Zone with everybody else. So some of them disappeared into the Phantom Zone. But ultimately, in the end, in Man of Steel, Cal couldn't do it all by himself. And this is the first Superman movie you'll ever see where Superman had to couple forces with human beings, the military, to take out the threat that was before them, which again is an overwhelming threat. The threats are always overwhelming. Even in Watchmen, it was about World War III, right? To stop that from happening. So, oh yes, World War III. So, because it was a Cold War. This was written in the 80s. So Man of Steel is unique in the sense that Cal, the protagonist of the movie, the person on the hero's journey in the movie has to convince the team that he can team up, that they can work together. So that's the difference between Man of Steel and say Owls of Ga'Hoole or Watchmen or Sucker Punch or Dawn of the Dead or 300, right? He had to convince these people that he was trustworthy so they could work together. In Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, there's some more convincing that needs to be done, but mostly through conflict. So what we were learning here, we're learning a bunch of stuff, okay, about ourselves with these movies, because Zack is approaching these movies differently every single time to build a team. In this case, conflict does also bring about team building sometimes. You see, being in a team doesn't mean you have to agree on everything. You can have fundamental different principled ways of looking at the world. In this case, Batman sees the world where he can prevent something from happening, whereas Superman sees the world in a way where I would do something to try to help the situation be better, right? So Superman's more of a doer, Batman's more of a preventer, right? So these two different philosophies clashed with each other. And not only did they clash with each other, but Batman actually viewed Superman as a threat. So he was literally trying to kill Superman. But through him, you know, his xenophobia, Superman was able to reach him. Again, Superman having to convince this person that he's doing things in their best interest. So he ended up really in a personal way reaching Batman. And it wasn't something that Superman planned on doing. It wasn't like he was that crafty. It just so happened to be how it panned out. But the point is that if they didn't have that conflict, they wouldn't have been as strong a team, and Batman wouldn't have felt so obligated to eventually, in Zack Snyder's Justice League, which is the next film, bring back Superman. And also to atone for the way the misjudgment and the miscalculation he had about him. So Zack Snyder's Justice League is the follow-up of Batman v Superman. But in this case, now we have someone who is intentional in forming a team, in building a team, and the members that join this team must do so by choice, even if the situation has changed, you know, and they may have initially rejected the choice to join the team. And this is very important for people to understand, that this movie is not just about situational, like Dawn of the Dead, where it was situational and everybody had to come together, right? This is different. This one was about people having a choice to join a team, right? And some of them initially said, I don't want to have nothing to do with y'all. right? And then they change their minds a little later on, and but they also, um, by joining the team, reap benefits from joining the team. So that's the difference with this movie and all the other preceding movies, in that we were able to see all of these people grow even more. And it's kind of like also Gahul a little bit, but they grew and they blossomed, and they were able to feed off of each other and feed each other information. Some of the people were mentors, some of the people wasn't, because we were more doing the hero thing more than the others longer and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, in the end of the day, they were able to feed into each other, and each person on the team had a significant role to play in the outcome of how things turned out eventually, right? So I found this to be very comprehensive. This is almost like a family movie, in the sense of family, and family not in a not in a biological way, but family in the spiritual way, like what I was just talking about in Corinthians 12, where you have a common goal, but you also, they each share common common problems, common tendencies, and so they're able to feed off of each other, even though they come from different walks of life and different, they're able to find commonalities. So it's not a team up only of necessity, even though it is to some degree. It's also a team up by choice. These people chose to team up, with each other. And by doing so, they get to understand each other. They got to stick around each other. They got to learn from each other. They got to benefit from each other and grow as individuals. So I thought this was a more comprehensive sort of team up movie that Zack Snyder did. Then you have Army of the Dead. Army of the Dead is interesting. So we talked about benefits. Army of the Dead is almost like Zack Snyder went full circle back to the beginning, in the sense that nobody survives Army of the Dead except for, I think, the young girl. She's the only one that survives, because the black man, he's been bitten, so he's like, oh F at the end of the movie. So there's just, I think it's just one survivor of Army of the Dead. And in this case, this is by choice. These group of criminals come together. Of course, one guy, the main protagonist of the movie, who dies in the end, he gets a team together. He forms a team, but his daughter is going in for a totally different mission. So there are two missions. One, they're forming a team to do a heist. They're going to steal most of the money from Las Vegas, and this is a zombie place, right? So they form this team, and he has a partner, and she's able to find some people. He's able to find some people himself, and they form this team. And then it gets complicated by his daughter wanting to take out somebody from in there, so the kids could get their mother back. That fails. This story is interesting in the sense that even though all these people come together to have a particular goal, and of course, it kind of reminds me of the first it reminds me of Dawn of the Dead, because you got these assholes that came in as well with different agendas, and the asshole obviously gets killed off. But the focus is not just on team building when it comes to the protagonists, such as these thieves that came to steal the stuff. It's also focused on the zombies. There's team building with the zombies. The zombies have their own community. They have their own king. His name is Zeus. They have their queen. Ultimately, in the end, actually, Zeus lives. The queen dies, but Zeus lives. The queen's baby dies as well. Well, I'm not sure if Zeus lives, actually, because the whole place gets nuked, right? So maybe Zeus doesn't live, but I hope Zeus lives. Anyway, whether Zeus lives or not, the black guy who got away, he's probably going to carry it on. The point, anyway, is this: that there's another team, and the team is the zombies. And the zombies have a community, and they love one another, and they have kids, and stuff like that. So it was very interesting to look at it from the zombies perspective. We never really considered that, and these zombies were pretty evolved. So there was team building on the zombies end, and extra recruits, and you go into this hierarchical structure, and you even had cyborg the zombies and so on. It was a stratosphere, and it was just pretty interesting to look at. And so I thought that uh, Army of the Dead was, because you call it Army of the Dead, of course, there's an army there. So I thought that that was interesting because you were actually having a viewpoint from the zombies' perspective, and you were also having a viewpoint from these robbers who were going in to steal something, right? And so, just like Army of Thieves is about these robbers who are going to steal something. It's kind of like Army of Thieves meets, Team Zombie. Team Zombie meets Army of Thieves, kind of like that. So I thought this was a very intriguing movie. Of course, it has so many layers and so much depth to it. How these zombies, you can kind of postulate and kind of think about how these zombies actually formed. And then there's all these loops that he's talking about and how many times they've actually gone through this loop and stuff like that. So it's very interesting, very intriguing on many, many levels. Rebel Moon. Okay. So what we will know is Rebel Moon is probably not going to be a team up movie like any other team up movies before. Because Zack Snyder, like I said before, he doesn't ever do a team up movie the same way. And that's what's so fascinating about him. But by doing these team up movies, he's showing us various ways and various, what's the word I'm looking for? He shows us various ways how we team up, why we team up with each other, and how we team up with each other. Of course, commonality has something to do with it. So we can team up by choice. Sometimes we team up by necessity. Sometimes, so you get these different kinds of relationships because of that. So Zack Snyder's never done any two team up movies the same. He's never. And I expect Rebel Moon to be yet another one that's pretty interesting. It's going to be pretty interesting. I don't know if it's going to be about family again. We'll see. I don't know. What he said is a lot of the protagonists are not perfect people, and they'll sometimes have to atone for what the evil they've done in their past. So this should be very interesting, and their value systems probably vary. So it should be interesting. That's what I'm saying. So I'm really intrigued to see what Rebel Moon brings to the table. But I thought I would share with you guys how varied these team up movies are that Zack Snyder has done, and he's done team up movies for a very long. I never really noticed that these were all team up movies, and it speaks to different aspects and different ways in which we either out of necessity, out of choice, out of commonality, we team up with people. And it would be interesting for us to look at how Snyder fans teamed up with each other in the future. But I just thought I would share that with you guys. You guys can talk in the comment section. I see you got a lot of you guys like you think you're getting a lecture or something. I'm not lecturing you guys. You can always interface with me. You can always talk with me. You can always interact with me. I am what you need, but I'm also known as Christ I Am Disciple. I cover boxing, yeah, but I also do cover movies, and I like to give some insight into some of the things I see in movies. So I hope you guys had a enjoyable time with this stream. I think I put this up on Twitter, but I did not put it up elsewhere. I guess people have to watch the stream after the fact. But I hope you guys have a good night. God bless you all. It's 2:05 a.m. in the morning where I am, but I just couldn't sleep, and I was drinking water. I didn't. For some reason, I lost water today. I think I left a hose on too long, and they took the water, and I drained out all the water. I didn't realize it. So I'm kind of up because I'm slightly dehydrated, and hydration is everything. And I was having like a sore or something in the back of my mouth. So I decided to stay up because I was feeling a little bit uncomfortable. And tonight is hot. Like the place is so humid, So I just said, well, let me put out this stream for you guys. I thought this was something interesting you guys might want to see. I'll catch you guys later. I am Christ I Am the Sample, aka What You Need. You guys have a good night now.